Hey, race fam, Brian Davis. Brian Davis races, and you can too. Today we have a special show. It's more like a podcast. We're actually going to interview Zach. Zach is a part of the race fam and reached out and had some questions about jumping into his first race. And I said, hey, man, if you have questions, other people have questions. Let's get through them. So he agreed to jump on camera, and we did a screen recording of our conversation. And I think there's some really cool questions in here. If you've never raced before, you'll definitely find some tips in here. If you've raced a ton, maybe you'll pick up a couple tips in the way that I do things. And either way, I think it's really refreshing to hear from somebody new jumping into bike racing and see what kind of questions they have. So without further ado, let's see what Zach has on his mind as he gears up for his first race. Brian Davis races, and you can too. And in fact, we have someone who is going to race, and it's Zach. And he's joining us. Zach reached out to me a couple of weeks ago and had some questions, and I thought, oh, this is perfect timing. Zach's going to do his first race coming up pretty soon, and I am so pumped to be able to offer any advice to make that an easier process or less intimidating or just a smoother day. And then we're going to talk about tactics. Zach and I have not done any rehearsing of what we're going to talk about, so it'll just be like a lot of my conversations. If you ask somebody in a group ride, hey, what do you think about this, this is the type of response you would get. So that's kind of my vibe. It's not overly technical. I just want to hopefully make things easier. So Zach, welcome to the channel.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. And listen, I reached out to you because I appreciate kind of your space out there, you know, and your willingness to help us and give advice to kind of the common man. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
That's awesome. So I hope other people watching probably going to have these same questions. So I'm super excited to not only help Zach, but also hopefully this affects other people. And if anybody else wants to see this and think like, hey, that would be really cool, I'd like to hear from Brian on that, please message me. I think these are super fun videos. I'd love to, if it got to the point we could do live call-ins and help people do these things, and I could bring in other people from my team or even call in some people I know around the country that might be able to offer some different perspectives on how races go down where they are. And that is different from region to region. So Zach, you are out in Maryland, is that correct?
That's right. Yep.
And we were out in Maryland. So how long have you been riding, Zach, at all? Any sort of road bike riding, I guess?
Yeah, sure. So out of college, which was about 25 years ago, I started doing some triathlons and enjoyed that. I grew up playing soccer and so ran a lot and then got a lot more interested in riding. So riding has been a hobby for a while. I've got a lot of miles in my legs, but never really done anything competitive other than triathlons. A couple of years ago, I had another running injury, and I thought, forget this. I want to get on the bike. I like riding more than I like running anyway. And so, you know, I started doing some like coffee rides and small group rides and just getting out on my own. So, you know, I ride a lot. I enjoy it a lot, but I've never really been competitive with it. And so even in my midlife here, I thought I would give it a shot and try to figure out how to race a little.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is almost exactly other than the playing soccer part, that is exactly what happened to me. So you've got a couple years. How many hours a week would you say you train on average when it's the right type of season?
So there isn't a typical, right? Because I feel like I'm ramping up.
Okay.
So for the past probably 6 to 8 weeks, I've been doing 4 to 5 to 6 hours a week.
Perfect.
When the weather's nicer and I can commute on my bike, I will throw, you know, 6 hours in commute, like 3 days a week. It's about an hour each way.
Oh,
and then weekend group rides. So that might end up being 8 to 10 hours a week in the spring when it starts getting nicer. So that it's enjoyable, but it's not overwhelming.
That is, that's exactly where I was a couple years ago when I was, I think when I was a really competitive 4 or early on competitive 3, it was probably in that 4 to 6 range. And then
Yeah.
it ramped up when I got into 2s. So now I'm usually 8 to 10, somewhere in
Okay.
there. And
Wow.
then some of the guys that are winning in my area, they're probably in the 10 to 12 range, depending on natural talent. Some of them are just talented humans. So
Yeah. No, actually, I want to ask. So, of those 8 to 10, how much of that is structured time versus just going out and doing kind of longer rides on the weekend or whatever?
I would say probably we'll just take last year as an example because that was, I think, my first year in a few years that I didn't have a coach, or I guess it was my second year that I didn't have a coach. So I would say I'd go out and do it just a putzing, do whatever Brian feels like doing, ride maybe once a week. But other than that, I had a pretty good goal of what I was trying to accomplish, maybe twice a week because I would do. I tried to do a group ride once a week,
Yeah.
and usually when I would do the group ride stuff, I want to be pretty purposeful with the group ride. That I want to go out with the right guys that are going to do the right things that I'm looking for that particular week. And usually,
Yeah.
I look to the group ride to provide me with the high end, just killing myself level of effort. Of the 8 to 10, I'd say 2 hours a week are totally whatever I feel like, but the other 6 are pretty purposeful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And no strength. I haven't really done any strength workouts or, abs or 2 years ago, I did a lot more yoga, and I can tell that I'm not doing yoga. I miss making time for the yoga stuff. So I felt just a lot more comfortable on the bike. All right. So your first race is in like 4 weeks out, 6 weeks out.
Yes. Yep. 4 weeks out, March 23rd. It's not a crit. So, I think it's a circuit race. I'm not honestly sure about the difference other than maybe it's a longer loop. I'm
Yep.
not sure.
Yep. You nailed it. So there's 3 things, right? Road, crit, and circuit.
Okay.
So my personal opinion on some of this stuff, like the road, people love when they're getting into racing to feel like this is just Brian talking, but people feel like road is really safe for whatever reason. They feel it's safer and they're more comfortable with it. I think it's because it's more similar to a group ride.
Okay.
But this will probably be a theme we'll talk about a few times tonight, is that there's a massive difference between a group ride and a race. And we'll get back to that. But as far as a road race, I always find them to be more nerve-wracking and more dangerous and more stressful because no one knows where they're going next. I mean, if it's a long 20-mile road that's dead straight, then fine, which we have here. But most road races try to take you to interesting places and interesting terrain. So, you're turning, you don't know if there's gravel on that turn or not gravel on that. It's just, to me, it's more stressful. Then you have crit racing, which is very predictable because you've been around that turn 50 times. Now, I will tell you that turn that you went around so many times during your race changes completely in the last 2 laps. So
Really?
because the way that people approach that turn changes. So typically you'll find the fastest corner or the fastest line because people are flying through those in the first 2 laps. But before that in the race, you can be inside, outside, all over, because there's really no bad way to do most of the turns at the level that we're racing at. But then when it gets to the last 2 laps, that's when things get straight as an arrow. Everybody's strung out. And that's when the line gets really specific, which is cool because then you're like, oh yeah, I should have been doing that. So, so I like crits just because I know they get a bad rap for being dangerous for some crashing and things like that. But
Right.
I don't think that it has anything to do with the course. It has more to do with the people racing and how hyped up they get. And so then there's circuit, which is like the blend in between these two. So I don't mind circuit racing because it's closer to a crit, in my opinion, than a road. So like a circuit race, you might do 4 laps of this park or something wherever you're going to be racing.
Yeah.
Is it in a park?
Yeah, it's in a park. It's 7 laps of a 1.5-mile loop.
Okay, perfect. So the thing about being in a park is it's meandering turns. So it's you'll probably only have 1, maybe 2 technical 90-degree turns.
Okay.
So that makes it less stressful, and you'll figure those out. And it's that part's that part's not so bad. So, but you'll have elevation, I'm sure. Even in
Yeah.
Maryland, you'll have some elevation in these hills. And I don't know where you live in Maryland. I guess when I drove through there, parts of it are super hilly and parts of it are flat. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's a little hilly. It won't be horrible.
Okay. Is that so? I was going to ask you this too. If you had to define what type of rider you are, would you say that you're a climber, a sprinter, a diesel engine? Where do you fit?
I'm probably more of a climber.
Okay.
If I were going to be really competitive, I should lose some more weight. But I would much rather, I enjoy climbing a lot more than powering it out on the flats. That's a lot harder for me.
Do you know your, you have your FTP, right? What'd you say? 285? Is that right?
Yeah, 285.
Okay.
And I'm about 170 pounds. So what is that, like 77 kilograms or something? 70
Right.
plus kilograms.
So let's say, so your watts per kilo at FTP is 285 divided by 77. That's you at 3.7. That's like right where I am. So then there's this.
I don't think I'm where you are, though.
I think so. I mean, statistically, you are. So let's see if I can find it. There's this great chart on cyclingtips.com website. I'll send you this link in the chat.
Awesome.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So that, I don't know if you've ever looked at that, but that's the power to weight or the watts per kilo for various levels of cyclist. So it goes from Cat 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then it breaks down the power into 5-second, 1 minute, 5 minute.
Oh, wow.
And then functional threshold. So at 3.7, you should be like overlapping 3, 4 is your statistically is your power.
Okay.
So the cool thing about this chart is it's cool and mildly depressing. so it's cool because you're like, oh, okay, I can see right where I'm going to slot in. And then like you can take your sprint power and figure out if you're a really powerful sprinter. It's just an awesome chart to figure out where you fit. So the depressing part is that because it's really accurate. So it's like, man, cycling is so formulaic that it's a little bit frustrating. Now in a Cat 5, it's not formulaic because anything can happen in a Cat 5 race. So you'll be a Cat. This is your first race.
Yes.
So you'll be a Cat 5, and then I think the requirement is you have to race 10 times to move to a 4. Mm-hmm. And then after that, then it kicks into the point system, which I honestly have never understood, but that's on my bucket list to figure out how the USA Cycling makes any sense for upgrade points. All right. So anyway, that's really good news. So what that says to me is that, you could perform really, really well because I feel like you're probably more fit, power to weight ratio stronger than most of those guys that are going to be in that race. So I just want to plant that seed that in your mind that you can hang with any of these guys that are going to be in this race. No doubt about it. Now, I will say this. There are on occasion, especially the first race of the year, there are on occasion somebody that's just, they were a world-class speed skater and then they just took up cycling this year. Well, they have to go through 10 races too.
Yeah.
I'll have to start as a 5. So this guy could lap the field 5 times and you're like, oh, okay. But
right.
So that does happen, but it's, every other year there's a guy like that, but
yeah. And then there will be juniors in as well, I think too, right? Or no?
Well, well, that depends. So around here we have Cat 5 Open, which could be anyone of any age. Juniors would be able to enter Cat 5 Open.
Okay.
And then we have Masters Cat 5. So in our area, Masters is 35 plus.
Yep.
Now, when I raced 5s, I would do both races just to get extra experience. And there was obviously a huge difference between racing with guys that have day jobs and racing with kids that are 18 years old, because we were all 18 months and the rules do not apply when you were 18, the rules of physics. So the Cat 5 Open races, there's going to be sketchy moments in there of weirdness. The Cat 5 Masters race will have a little bit of weirdness, but it's a lot less. But if you can do both, I would encourage you to do both.
Well, I think this one I don't think has a Masters Cat 5. I think it's got a Masters 1, 2, 3, 4,
Hmm.
but not a Masters 5.
Hmm.
So,
That's interesting.
yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Uh,
It does. So, one of the things I was going to ask you, there is, so that it starts with a Cat 4, and then there's a Cat 5, and then there's a combined Cat 4 5.
hmm.
So I'm trying to figure out, should I just, for my first race ever, jump in the 5 and stick with that? Or does it make more sense to jump in the 4 5? It's a slightly bigger field. I might learn more by having fours in there as well. Or should I just keep it simple?
So my gut would say that if either of those options offer a master's category, then I would do that.
Okay.
And if they don't, then again I would do both. I would do both anyway. And then
Yeah.
I guess where to put if you only had one race that you could focus on, or you had other commitments and you could only do one race. I think I would probably do the. I think with your fitness, I would do the 4-5 race.
Okay.
And you have years of experience riding, so I'm not worried about like your
Yeah.
sketchiness or I've never seen you ride, so I don't know how good you are, but I'm sure you're fine. Um, yeah, so I think the 4-5s will be fine, and the fives. The thing about doing the 4-5s and the fives that theoretically that should count as two races, so then you
That's true.
get through the 5 process faster.
Yep. Okay. That makes sense. Um, so one of the fundamental questions though that I have is should I should I get
You broke up for a second, so I'll repeat the question. The question was, should you do a annual USA cycling license or a 1-day license? So my answer to that would be, if you're going to do even one more race day this year, I would do the annual, because I don't. If you do the 1-day, that's $20 in.
yeah,
For the 1-day, it's you're a third of the way to paying for the license anyway. I think I would just I'd pay. I think I'd pay, because then it's also a little mental commitment to get you to race more. So I think
yeah,
I would do the annual if it was me. That'd be my advice. Like, again, that would be my advice if you were on a group ride with me. I'd say do the annual. You love cycling. You're into it. So support the organization that supports the sport. I think would be you can sell yourself on it that way too.
yeah, yeah. No, that makes total sense. Um, all right, and then I guess my last kind of prep question is
So you broke up there again. The question was, what can I do in the next 4 weeks to get ready? Can you
yes,
speak again? Okay, just so I mean.
yeah,
Okay, it's
yeah,
working. All right. So
exactly right.
I think the best thing you can do is about a week before is when you can start thinking about, well, maybe even 3 days before. Then I wouldn't do any more hard efforts. But leading up to that, I would do. I think you plan on doing a group ride tomorrow.
Yeah,
That's pretty spicy. So I think that'd be my advice. If you can, depending on your weather, like here, I'm still snowed in. We can't do group rides. Group rides. So you're Zwifting, right?
yes, I'm
Okay.
Zwifting.
So I would definitely do as many, not as, I don't want to say as many group rides as possible, but certainly one a week. That's harder than you think it should be. Have you done this group ride that you're going to do tomorrow that's faster? Have you done that one?
No,
Okay. I was thinking about this today because I thought that was the case. Um, how many people go on that ride? Do you have any idea?
it varies from 5 to 15.
Okay. So my advice, when you do, will you know some of the guys that are there?
A
Or
couple, a
okay.
couple. Yeah,
Okay. All right. That's really helpful. Because what I was going to say for anybody else that's listening to the video too is just try to figure out who the alpha is in that group before the ride starts, and just go up to that person and just say, hey, just join in. I've got a couple miles, a couple years under my belt. Just wanted to try to figure out cycling as a sport. Maybe, I don't want to infringe or mess with you guys. So, and if they're on their game, you shouldn't even be able to get that sentence out before they're just overly welcoming and like so excited to have you. And if they're not that way, then I'd keep shopping groups, because they should be that way. They should want to get new people in the sport. The point is, I've seen a lot of people show up at a ride and they're nervous and they don't come out and talk to the people that are there organizing the ride. And then it's weird because we don't know. Do you want some advice or coaching, or do you not want to be talked to? Do you want to be totally left alone? Like we're trying to, the organizers are trying to respect the experience that we think someone might be trying to have. So if you just come out and just level the playing field and be like, hey, teach me stuff. Like, awesome. Like if somebody started a group ride with us that way, we would be floored. We'd be so excited to have somebody on the sport. So yeah, that'd be just something I was thinking about. So good question. Yeah. So leading up, I would do at least one group ride a week. Maybe two if you can squeeze it in your schedule. But if a Zwift race will get you to that high end stuff that you need getting into the sport or getting into racing as well. But I wouldn't overthink the high end stuff. I think you'll be in good shape there.
Okay. Okay.
The question was, is the Zwift race like a real race? And I think what you're meaning there is it going to start like a Zwift race? Right.
Right. Yeah.
And so I don't think they start real life road races or circuit races don't start like a Zwift race. So you'll definitely get time to clip in. Maybe 3 or 4 times in my whole cycling career, I seen somebody clip in fast and just boom, just shoot off, it's pretty rare. So typically now in a younger race, like if you get those juniors in there, then you're going to get a couple kids there, especially the first race of the year, that are going to blast off. But the group will figure that out and people will chase it down. I mean, no one's going anywhere the first lap. So that's the first race of the year. There's always somebody, not somebody, there's multiple people that feel really fit. They feel great. And so they'll go out and do a little bit more effort than they probably should, which is really important. That's why, it's amazing when I see people that don't have power meters or have an understand, not that you have to have the meter on the race bike, but that understanding of what your limits are and how many matches you have to burn. So I wouldn't be intimidated by the start of a road race. Like the start of a cyclocross race is very different. That's where the sprint is in the very beginning, but the sprint in a road race is going to be at the end. So people don't freak out in the beginning. That'll work itself out pretty well. So in terms of positioning, when it does go down the road, I think my vote for you for your first race, I'd probably hang out closer to the back just to get the feel for things. And then if somebody if there's a crash ahead of you, your day's not over, you can easily get around that. And you're strong enough that getting rubber banded a little bit in the back is not going to affect you. And then when you get more comfortable to the ebb and flow of things, then just start working your way up. But the thing to remember is everybody else there is nervous too. Like no one is, especially in a Cat 5, right? It's got to be less than 10 races. So no one there is experienced.
Right.
And just by you having this conversation is probably more experience than a lot of those guys are going to have walking into this race. So carry some confidence with you that you belong there. You deserve to be up at the front and you can control the pace and hang with whatever happens along the way. So, in your brain, just be willing to get up there. What you are going to hear is these words. You're going to hear this over and over and over again. And these words are, hold your line. So people will say that till the cows come home. It is a totally stupid thing to say. It's meaningless. No one is trying to come off their line. No one is meaning to hurt anyone else or put them in danger. But certainly in the Cat 5 races, you're going to hear those words all the time. And what that does is that you don't know who they're talking to all the time. So you might think they're yelling at you. Yeah. But they're not. And even if they are, piss off. Who cares? I'm riding my bike. You ride yours. You mind your business. I'll mind mine. And like there was a race where this guy, we had a yellow line rule and he was on the outside and he was trying to come back in. And he's like, let me in. I'm like, no, I'm good. Thanks. I was friendly about it, but I'm like, no, I'm good. You made the mistake to be out there. So you can get the wind. You should really be getting a penalty right now. But, I'm not worried about that part, but I'm not going to go out of my way to help you come back in. That's not my job. So this gets into what the difference is with group riding and racing is that it's competitive. You're trying to beat people in a nice way where we don't crash each other out, right? But be willing to be a little more not even aggressive isn't even the right word, but I guess confident that that's your spot, that's your space, and you own that. Mm-hmm. Without you don't have, not trying to say be a jerk about it, but just like, this is my space, I earned it. This is my space. No one's allowed to take it from me, and that's my space. Right.
the cornering is the one that makes me the most nervous, right? With people kind of flying in on, dive bombing the corners, or, trying to make sure you hold your line through the corner, especially in a Cat 5 where I don't necessarily trust anybody else and nobody else trusts me to do what I'm doing. Do you have kind of advice around how to do that in the right way?
I do in a roundabout way. So cornering is tricky because when you go on a group ride, all those skills are frowned upon, right?
Right.
Like no one takes on a group ride. No one's trying to take high speed corners because it's dangerous. There's gravel. It would be stupid. So
Right.
as a cyclist, you don't get a lot of opportunity to practice that deep cornering, trusting your tires kind of moment. So what I used to do is spend some time, certainly I still do at the beginning of the season, is just ripping turns in a parking lot where there's those parking islands, and just
Hmm.
make a pretty good size square or rectangle and just work on just ripping turns. And then a lot of, if you can find a crack in the pavement and try to come inside of that crack and then try to go outside of that crack, or even bring a cone or an acorn or just something you can see, go inside of that, outside of that, and then just progressively move that in. So you're having to cut it sharper and sharper. You just
Yeah.
start to get a feel for how much brake you need and how far you can lean the bike over, before you get into trouble. I watched a video of somebody else's race breakdown video, and they had some really cool points. It's like, if the road is in good condition and you have decent tires and it's dry, man, it takes a lot to knock over a bike with grip.
Right.
Like it,
Right.
that's hard. You'll catch your pedal 99% of the time before your tire just slips.
Yeah.
But catching the pedal is, that's an interesting thing too. In Cat 5s, you'll see people, like, if you hang around the rest of the day, what you'll see is those same corners that you guys would, you just remember, you would go into that turn and you'd level your pedals to go through, or, you'd high side the inside of the turn. Now watch the Cat 3s, the Cat 2s, the Cat 1s, they're pedaling right through that same turn.
Yeah.
Different.
One faster.
Yeah, a lot faster, but they're just a lot more confident that they're not going to hit. They know the physics of what's underneath them a little bit better. So yeah, that
Hmm.
just comes with time.
Yeah. Yeah. One other question. You talked about kind of feeling confident out there and being ready for it. How does the warm up play into that? Like how hard should I get myself ready? Or is that, I mean, again, we're only talking what, 10.5 miles or something. So it's not a super long race.
Right. So then the shorter the race, the longer the workout is kind of the rule of thumb, right? Or the harder the workout, or the
Yeah.
warm up rather.
Yeah.
So the warm up thing is something I have struggled with for years. So I have found that I think Zwift has really helped me understand this better, because I would warm up for Zwift races. Last year I did a lot more Zwift racing. I would warm up for a Zwift race and it would be 5 minutes and I could feel like the flush come through my body to get warm. And after about 15 minutes, then I could feel the flush reach my legs. And about
Mm.
20 minutes, I was like, okay, I'm good.
Hmm.
And then the other thing is, like, if you've done the 20-minute FTP test with Zwift,
Yeah.
that warm up process, I think, is really pretty good for what you are going to be facing, because, and the thing to remember there is it's harder than you think it should be.
Yeah.
And so maybe I'd back off a little bit of how hard they prescribe that particular warm up to be, because you're going to be racing a little bit longer than that. But yeah, I wouldn't be afraid to punch it for a good couple minutes just to get that burn out of your legs. And then after that, it feels a lot better. But yeah, it's tough for me to answer, because I feel like I'm the least expertised person in the world about warming up.
Right.
The one thing I wanted to add about warming up too, though, is that I feel like you should reserve a little bit of your brain that says a warm up is not 100% necessary for you. If you had to jump out of the car and race because you got stuck in traffic or some weird thing happened, like,
Yeah.
I just want to impress upon people that you can have a great performance without a warm up. If things go right for you, it can still be an amazing day. So don't let those negative things that happen pre-race start to bleed into the race. So like a traffic jam that's out of your control, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. So make the best of it, show up, I'm going to dangle off the back and warm up, dangle off the back and warm up if it's a slow race, or I'm going to, blast off the front and warm up that way and just
Right.
plan to get caught. But some weird riding might get you through your warm up phase in race. So yeah, anyway, that's my two.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense. How maybe I'm overthinking this, but I also am thinking about kind of race
Mm-hmm.
strategy and the degree to which I should say, all right, I want to go into this and I want to be aggressive, or I want to go into this and I want to like hang back and kind of stay out of the wind as much as possible and kind of just save it till the end. And is that on a case by case basis? Just see how I feel that morning as I go out there, or how do you
I,
like
th- I
figure
think
out how you're going to race?
I think almost all of it depends on what type of rider you are. So as if you're more climber-ish, then I'm assuming that you're closer to a diesel than you are a sprinter. If you had to pick
Yeah.
one,
Yep.
so if you're closer to a diesel, then you should be thinking about like, is there going to be a break? Should I be the one to establish it? Breaks in Cat 5s are super rare.
Right.
So the reason they're rare is that Cat 5 racing is a lot like if you watch 6-year-olds play soccer, right? Like everybody just swarms to the ball.
Yeah.
That's what's happening in a Cat 5 breakaway. So because that Cat 5 mentality hasn't switched over from group ride to racing yet.
Yep.
If you give a dog something to chase, man, they will chase
They'll
it.
chase it.
They will chase it. So that they won't let a break go because there's not much team tactics in a Cat 5 race just because these guys are
No
probably
team.
rarely on a team, or they haven't been on a team long enough to worry about team tactics, which is fine. No, it should be that way.
Right.
But anyway, it's very rare for a race to go. So if you feel like your strengths are not going to allow you to win in a sprint, then I think I would probably lean toward being more aggressive and taking that flyer for 2 laps, or with like 15 minutes to. Oh, this is a good one. So the race will have ebb and flow.
Mm-hmm.
Every race has this. So I noticed like Cat 5 or Cat 1-2 racing in Toad last year, Tour of America's Dairyland,
Okay.
at about, or the year before. I couldn't do it last year. At about the 10-minute to 12-minute mark is when things would settle down. So the first 10 minutes in those races were bonkers. And then 10 to 12 minutes, like every single, and the only reason I learned this pattern is because I would sit and do the race cast and I'd be like, man, look at that. At 10
Right.
minutes, it slows right down. And at 12 minutes, it picks up again. And then usually with about 10 or maybe 10 or 15 minutes left to go, then it would have another lull. So that's the 1-2 races have I'd say two really good lulls. But in the Cat 5 races, you're going to have a lot more lulls. So for if I were out there doing it, I'd say, first of all, have fun. And if you attack and they catch you, who cares? Like it's goofing around, right? So
Right.
I encourage you to just go out and give it a flyer because no one knows who you are. And they'll be like, oh, you'll hear them screaming like, he can't hold it. He can't hold it. Like these guys all know you or something, right? Well,
Yeah.
I mean, based on your number, I feel like you could hold it. So,
We'll see. Right.
it'd be fun. I'd say this: when you get in the car and go home, if you did at least one move like that, you would definitely go home like satisfied that you gave it a shot and had fun, and they pulled you back, and there was nothing you could do in the sprint. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you don't give one of those shots, give it a go. I feel like you might get in the car and be like, oh, I had a lot more gas in my tank. So
Yeah. Yeah, but that's, I think you were saying if I do both the 5 and the 4-5, then that can allow me to try to play around in different ways.
Yeah.
Right.
So when I do 2 races, I always pick one that I want to focus on doing well in and do my A strategy, and then the other one is just hang on for dear life in my case, because the only other race I can do is the Pro 1-2 race. So that's my goal this year, is to do my Masters race and then finally finish one of the pro races. But I would find one race that you care a little bit more about and make your A strategy that day that race, and then the other one is more about experimentation and having fun or just hanging on for dear life. Either way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. All right. Are there other things outside of the racing, outside of the strategy, that I need to think about, right? Whether it's stuff that I bring with me there that I make sure I have. You know, I don't, what else do I need to think about?
So when for me, I'd say I raced for 6 or 8 years, and every time I'd race, I was had lots of nerves. Like driving down there, I was nervous and tense, and then for whatever reason, one year, a couple years ago, it just snapped in my brain, and I'm like, I don't know. I've raced a lot. I don't care. It's gonna be fun. I'm gonna go have fun, and that's that. I mean,
Right.
racing for me is like yoga for my wife, right? Like when she goes to yoga, she just chills out, she can focus, and her brain is totally engulfed in this moment of doing yoga. And that's how racing is for me. It's like the only time in my life that I'm not thinking about anything else other than racing. And that's what gives me so much joy about it, is that it's so focused.
Right.
So I think how you mentally approach these things is can be important. So not stressing yourself out about it, remembering that it's fun. And then for me, I suck at being prepared for things. So things that are in my control, at least like the week of, like anything past 2 weeks, I can't plan for them. So
Right.
like I think you had a question in the email when you reached out to me, is should I pre-register for the race? And my
Right.
answer to that would be, yeah, absolutely. If for a couple of reasons, one, then it massively increases your chances of showing up, even if it's raining.
Right.
So,
Right.
and then secondly, it's just one more thing you don't have to think about when you show up. You don't have to try to figure out these ridiculous USA Cycling forms, which are like forms for an ant. I mean, they're
Yeah.
impossibly small, at least around here.
Yeah.
So if you're pre-regged, you don't have to do that. If you haven't, oh, that's another thing. If you have an annual license, it's just on your phone. So
Yeah.
they can scan it in or see that you paid or whatever it is, and keep your email. And I keep after registration, I'll make sure the email shows up in my phone, so I have that with me.
Right.
I will. This is an interesting thing. Like it sounds like you know where this race is, but if you're racing somewhere that you don't know exactly where it is, race flyers have really dumb ways of describing where the race is all the time. They're like,
Right.
oh, it's the gravel road down by the farm and turn left. Like, no one knows what that is. So what I always feel like, why don't they just put a normal address in that's close that I
Right.
can put in my GPS on my phone, and I'll get within 100 yards of your location. Like they'll say it's at such and such park. And then like everyone who's racing has to go look up where such and such park is, instead of just putting an address on the
Right.
flyer that I can use. So that's super
Yeah.
frustrating, but stuff like that. And then, um, one of the things that I did is I had a written list for when I would go race, and I would just write down all the stuff that I want to take with me. So I'd have an extra set of wheels. I'd have tubes, tires. I'd bring all, like, especially racing this time of year, it's really more about clothing than anything else. Like you got your
Yeah.
arm warmers, you got your vest, you got your helmet A, helmet B, shoes. Like the worst thing you can do is show up to a race and realize you forgot your shoes. Like that's the worst. So, and
Right.
then I always have extras. Like my garage is stuffed with all this stuff, and I'm always like, at the beginning of the year, I'm like, listen, these shoes are not going to do anyone any good sitting in my garage. I'm just going to put them in my trunk. Like my car is
Right.
pretty big. I can throw extra shoes and an extra helmet in my trunk, and then I can always race no matter what. As long as I have shoes and a helmet, I can race. So those pretty much live in my trunk all summer long. So just trying to reduce the amount of variables that you have to think about, I think, is really important. Like, is the gassing up your car the day before, so that'll save you 15 minutes that you don't have to get off the highway somewhere. Uh,
Yeah.
Having the cooler. I have like a pre-race cooler and then like a race cooler. So the pre-race cooler is sitting next to me. It's got my drinks to drink in the car ride down. So all the racing that we do is about an hour and a half from my house, because it's in Milwaukee or Madison. So that sucks, but that's part of our world. And then anything I want to have on the way home. I don't really worry much about like recovery food or recovery cooler on the way home. A lot of times I'll stop at a gas station and grab some snacks and call it good. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So
All right.
reducing the variables.
Yeah. That sounds smart. Less to stress out about.
Right. Very,
Yeah.
very simple
I,
day.
yeah. Um, I don't know. I don't feel like I have a lot more questions. Obviously, my biggest question: am I going to be ready? How is it going to feel? But I won't know that until I get out.
Yeah, no, you won't, but that'll be fun. the,
Do it.
the killer is that we, like even in the upper categories, we don't know what some guys have on years and some guys have off years. And, like some guy that you raced with 2 years ago, got divorced and has all the time in the world to ride a bike, and all of a sudden he's just crushing and you're like, whoa, what happened to this guy? So yeah, every year is a new world.
Yeah. But no, that's really helpful. I'm going to make sure I register, sign up, get my license, and at least be ready to go. And then, I'm going to try to figure out how to GoPro the race.
Yeah,
so that should
absolutely.
be fun.
I think that would be just amazing. I'd love to, if you can get that footage, that would be amazing. I mean, if it doesn't work out, that's fine too. But, and then the other thing I think, Zach would be really cool. I don't know. I think I emailed this, but if not, when you're done, if you just grab your phone and just catch some footage of yourself, here's I'm excited or I'm totally dejected or whatever. Yeah. I think getting that reaction would be really helpful. And so as far as people watching this later on YouTube, a big part of this is, if Zach has these questions, hopefully you have some of these questions. I feel like that's going to help a lot of people get closer and closer and closer and closer to feeling confident that they can race. And the thing about racing, like I don't do a good enough job of saying this to people, is like, you don't have to be fast to race. You don't. It's not necessarily speed by any stretch of the imagination. So if you enjoy racing and you like the concept of putting a number on your back and getting out there and mixing it up, that's awesome. You don't have to be fast. And certainly in road, it helps to like hang with people so you're not like dangling off the back the whole time, because that's not fun. But like cyclocross, there's tons of people that go at their own pace and they're just out there to have fun and enjoy a course. Fat bike, mountain bike, same thing. There's a huge contingent of people that have no intention of ever seeing the front of a race. And in road, that's probably not as big of a contingent. There's definitely more people that feel like they want to see the front of the race, but you don't have to be that way. You can just go out and have fun. So anyway, that's my take. So I guess I'll wrap it up. I can't thank you enough because I think it's really helpful for people to do that, for people to see that. So anyway, to wrap up the video, if you like what I had to say today, please give me the thumb, give me a comment. What kind of questions do you have for your first race? If you could leave those in the comments, and I'm happy to address every single one of them. And if you are interested in jumping on a call like this with me, just reach out and we'll do another call. And if we get enough people that want to do these types of things, we'll do live sessions. And I think that would just be a blast to help us grow the sport, grow our fitness, grow our knowledge. So thanks for watching Brian Davis Races. We'll catch you soon.